week since we done our last podcast, and we're going to try and make it a weekly thing. So let us know what you thought about the other ones, what you think about the one we're gonna do right now, and we're really glad that we have a really special guest who's going to feature us today. And we've been in touch, quite often, and we've tried to get this one to, come on today, and it's happened. We're really happy. Alice Bosley, and she's the editor. She's the CEO of 51 Labs. If any of you know about that, you will know about that, and you probably know her. Now, Alice is working in 51 Labs, and she's really helping a lot of entrepreneurs that want to get their business underway, and it's doing really, really well. And it's non-profit as well. So, it's been, I've spoke to her about it, I've heard about it. What you've told me about it has been like really, really good, that I've wanted to think of a business idea myself so I can get myself participated. But yeah, it's been it's a really good thing that we've got going on and that you've got going on. Tell everyone that's listening a bit more about it.
Yeah, sounds good. First of all, thank you both for having me on this podcast.
Pleasure.
Thank you for coming.
This is an awesome podcast, and also a very entrepreneurial endeavor. So I'm really happy to be part of it. And hello, everybody. So 51 Labs is a startup incubator. What that means is that we are an organization that's 100% dedicated to helping people with business ideas to launch their businesses.
Yeah.
And that means that we provide all of the things that are necessary to kind of go from an idea to an actual business. So we provide training on kind of business, innovation, creativity, and leadership. We provide our entrepreneurs with mentors. These are people from Facebook or Google or startups around the world who can help them kind of think through what it means to start a business. We provide them with free office space in our co-working space. We provide them with kind of networking opportunities, links to investors. And then at the end of some of our programs, if they kind of have a good enough business idea, we also provide them with seed funding of up to $15,000, which is pretty awesome.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
So the people who come on and try and get part of the program, what level do they need to be at? Do they need to have an idea? Do they need to have something that's got, have they got a pilot? Have they started already? Where are they in the business plan?
That's a great question, and it kind of differs based on what program you're applying to. So for our startup incubator, which is kind of our main program, all you really need is a business idea. And hopefully you have been kind of working enough on that idea that you have a good understanding of what that business would mean.
A good pitch to someone like you.
Yeah. Or like the ability to say, okay, this is why I think that customers would want whatever it is that I have. So maybe you've already started talking to customers, you've already been doing some market research. Basically that you can prove to us that you're actually serious about this and that you have kind of the grit and determination to turn this actually into a business. Because launching a business is really hard, no matter where you are, and especially in Iraq, I'm sure you guys know. And so we want to find kind of the people who have the personality and the drive and the idea who can launch a business. So those are kind of really the things that we're looking for.
The fundamentals,
You work with, you said you have mentors from Facebook, Google, places like that. How do you get in touch with those people, and what motivates them to work with young people from here?
Yeah, I mean, to answer your second question first, I feel like people who are farther along in their career and have been pretty successful just want to help other people. And for people living in the United States or in the UK or Dubai who are successful, I think the idea of working with badass entrepreneurs in Iraq, who are kind of defying the odds to launch really cool businesses, for them that sounds like an amazing opportunity. And so it's actually, we have too many people who want to be mentors. Yeah, people are just really excited about it. They love the idea of working with awesome young people in a different location. How we find them is a bit more complicated. I mean, it's anything from us going and speaking at international conferences and kind of talking about what we do, to using our kind of personal networks. I went to school in the Silicon Valley, and so a lot of the people are people that that we kind of just know through what we've been doing.
Right. And how do you think the ideas that come to you 5-1 Lab and, you know, being pitched to you guys, how narrow-minded or how creative are they, you know, in terms of, because usually people just come up with like the same kind of neighborhood of ideas. Does that happen with you guys, or do you guys get all kinds of like crazy ideas? Or
yeah, we get all kinds of crazy ideas,
okay.
And they're awesome. I mean, some are super creative, some are more traditional, but as long as you can prove to us that there is a market, like there's a gap where this idea falls in, then we are willing to listen to it. And so for our startup incubator, what we say is that the ideas need to be scalable and innovative.
Yeah.
So that means that we're not necessarily supporting like a corner store or a flower shop.
Yeah.
But if you can convince us that you're disrupting the flower shop industry and creating this like monster flower shop chain that will spread across the world, then that's the sort of idea that we're really excited about.
Right.
And we've heard, I mean, there are always ideas that surprise us. I think there are always some ideas that recur, like taxi apps, food delivery apps, grocery delivery apps, like those kind of keep coming. But honestly, there's still demand. Like the market isn't totally saturated in those areas either. So
yeah, I mean, there's room for growth in just about any sector in Kurdistan right now. I mean, just think about like the corner stores that you're talking about. Like we could have organic milk. We could have, you know, a lot of different things that they don't have right now. But like, as you said, it has to be scalable and it has to be, you know, innovative. So of the ideas that you get pitched and, you know, the amount of people that come, first of all, I'll dig into it a bit more. But like, do you get a lot of applicants?
So for our flagship program, this 3-month startup incubator, we take 10% of the applicants generally. So in the last incubator, we had over 150 applicants, and we only accepted around 15 to our program.
Right.
And it keeps every single time we do these programs, the applicants grow. Because they hear about it from their friends or through social media or whatever it is. That doesn't mean the number of like great applicants grows. But yeah, I mean, it's clear that I think young people are just getting really interested in entrepreneurship as a legitimate career pathway. And we kind of, in the car on the way over here, we were talking about how to some people being an entrepreneur is the same as being unemployed. You know, like you're talking to your friends or family and they're like,
they don't get it. Yeah, exactly.
And I think what we've seen is kind of in the younger generation, it's just becoming something. It's actually a thing that people want to do.
How would you define being an entrepreneur? Like, what is an entrepreneur? Because it can be it can be a very big blanket word for a lot of things. So, how would you define it?
For us, being an entrepreneur is being someone who wants to launch kind of an innovative business based on a real problem in the market, and generally you're starting from a pretty small place. So you're not someone who has millions of dollars and you're launching a factory. You're someone who's kind of bootstrapping and scrappy and gritty, and you're trying to solve some problem, and you solve it a little bit, and then you get a little bit of capital, and you grow and you grow from there. So
there's always fun in that struggle. Like every business owner has been there, the ones that start their own business.
Yeah.
So tell me, you know, we're talking about entrepreneurs, and when you get pitched by 150 people, like you might get a couple of the same ideas, you might get an idea that is scalable and innovative, but maybe the entrepreneur isn't as inspiring as, you know, you'd hope, right? So tell me, if you were to tell me a percentage of, say, one of which being the idea and the pitch. No, forget the pitch. Just the idea, and the other being the entrepreneur. And you listening to the pitch, which is more important? Which one do you give more value to?
I love that question. Okay, so if you are a new entrepreneur and you're like, Alice, you have to listen to this thing that I want to tell you, and you pitch to me, I would say 50% of it is idea and 50% is you as an entrepreneur. But if the idea is really thought through, and if you can provide me with data and it's clear that you've worked on it, then that reflects back on you, if that makes sense. So if someone comes to us with a poorly thought through idea, then we also know that they are not really serious about it. So it kind of all comes back to you as an entrepreneur.
They go hand in hand.
Yeah.
You can't be a great entrepreneur without an amazing, a relatively good idea. You can't have a great idea without being a relatively good entrepreneur.
I think great entrepreneurs can make any idea great.
Wow.
Or can find the right ideas, right? Like our entrepreneurs, they pivot. Like they learn something new about their customers, and they have to, like every entrepreneur is going to have to change their idea a bit.
For sure.
Because you come in thinking this one thing is awesome, right? You have this idea, and in your brain it is the best idea in the world.
Yeah.
But once you start testing it on customers, once you start really learning about the market, you're definitely going to understand that part of what's inside your head just doesn't work. And so you have to be willing to shift. And so really it's more about the entrepreneur and being able to keep working even after you've realized that part of your idea doesn't work. The ability to kind of be flexible and listen to feedback. If you can't do that, then you're not going to be successful.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, those things are important, as important as the idea. And with the entrepreneurs that you've spoken to, and just going back to Sam's question, another question of would you rather? Tell me, like, you have to be hardworking as an entrepreneur, and you have to be kind of smart, right? You have to be kind of smart, I think. Anyway,
obviously,
to be smart, you have to think of there has to be a hole in the market. There has to be a logical business cycle to this. Is it going to make some money? Tell me, do you think hard work is the most important thing that an entrepreneur needs to have? Or is it the innate ability to, think logically, be a quick thinker, be a good pitcher? Like, is hard work number one?
Okay, I'm going to throw this back to you two.
Go on.
Because you are entrepreneurs, right? You launched this podcast.
Yeah.
You've been working on it now for 8 months.
Yeah.
What do you think? Do you think it's because you've been working your butts off to get it off the ground, or do you think it's because you guys are super smart geniuses who are launching it?
I think that. Well, do you want to go first, or I'll go first?
Well, I know we're not geniuses, but
yeah, that's so. Like, look, forget about genius. Let's say it was a good idea that we happened to come across. Right. I think the only thing holding us back, or holding me, because this isn't the only thing that I'm working on. But say the only thing that's holding me back from becoming an amazing entrepreneur to being just an entrepreneur is the hard work. I think I need to put in the shift. I need to put in way more hours than that I put in right now. And that's what's holding. That's the last barrier. Because I feel like I do have the interest, the passion, and some knowledge to go out there, and the sales skills, because I do sales. But it's just the hard work. I think it's that, and that's why I asked you the question. I think, do you agree with me on that?
Yeah, I mean, so starting a business is hard, no matter where you are. Whether you're in the Silicon Valley or whether you're in Iraq, it's really challenging to kind of take something that doesn't exist and to make it exist, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you're basically doing magic here.
Absolutely.
So I think in order to do that, you have to be willing to work your ass off. I mean, that's just...
Keep going.
Yeah. And so the entrepreneurs that we've seen be the most successful hours and just keep working at it, but also are the ones that are able to kind of bounce back even when things get really hard. Because there will be ups and there will be downs. And so I think in addition to being able to work hard, it's just being able to kind of see the big picture and to constantly say, okay, today sucked, but like I know that in 2 months this thing will happen. And so you can work, basically what I'm saying is you can work as hard as you want, but if you get burnt out and you can't kind of keep in mind the big picture, then it's not going to work for you either.
For sure.
So I think that that's a necessary part.
Yeah, not letting the low numbers and the bad results like put you down is very important, I think. And yeah, to pat ourselves on the back as well. I think the hard work and actually doing something like we talked about earlier. A lot of people I'm sure had the idea of doing a podcast, but it's just the fact that getting together in a room and like getting the mics together and the cameras, like I think that's very important. Just taking action rather than just like sitting around with an Edgar and talking about it is like way different.
Yeah, we have, and I'm sure you guys have kind of come across this also, but we have lots of people who come up to us and say, you know, I had, and we always, and sometimes something actually has happened that the idea
gets stolen.
Yeah, and that has happened. But then like when you dig deeper, a lot of these stories is I had an idea, I didn't do anything about it, and then someone else launched a similar business. And in our mind, like if you haven't taken that action, if you haven't actually started building something, then you can't call that your idea. Like you have no ownership over it until you guys kind of do what you have done and say, okay, like tomorrow we're going to create this thing and we're just going to start it.
Is that a thing that you've seen in our culture? I want to dig a bit deeper into, you know, what you've seen that's unique to our culture and to our regulations and to our systems that hold entrepreneurs back. But to touch on the topic that you were talking about just now, do you think that sort of, I wouldn't say jealousy, but the excuse making, do you think it's something that you've seen more of here?
I wouldn't call it excuse making. I think that there is probably more distrust here, especially when it comes to idea theft, than I had seen working with entrepreneurs in the United States, for example. I think kind of going back to the policy, like there are real reasons for that. It's really hard to protect your ideas here. And so I think that just is a really scary thing. Like if you are quitting your job and starting a new business and you know that there's this danger of someone else taking your idea, like of course you are going to be distrustful. Sure. But I think what we're trying to kind of work with our entrepreneurs on is when you are an early entrepreneur and you don't have a business yet, then it's harming you if you keep your idea to yourself, because you need co-founders, you need supporters, you need people to be able to help you. And that will never happen if you are too scared to tell anyone about your idea. And sometimes that fear, like we just said, sometimes that fear actually stops people from doing anything at all. Exactly. Like they're like, why would I start a business? Someone will just take it. And so I think we're just trying to convince people that even if someone does steal your idea, if you are the first to the market, like if another podcast comes online now, you guys have already been doing it for 8 months. You already have a following. People already know about you. You already have a brand. And so you guys are farther along. So even if someone else starts and they call it like highly great, like it'll still be okay because you guys are still the first movers. And so that's what we're like, just get started. Like if you're scared about this, then that means you should start yesterday. Like you just need to start doing it.
There's definitely an advantage to being a first mover, but one thing I learned in my entrepreneurship class this last
Who
semester,
taught you that?
Your husband.
Pat Klein.
Shout out to Mr.
Shout out.
Yeah. One thing, like it's great to be a first mover, but at the same time, like you were talking about hiding your ideas, you shouldn't be afraid to hide your ideas around. For example, in our instance, like 20 other students, because if your idea is like so weak that you can't defend it, like against 20 other competitors, like how will it survive in the real world?
Yeah.
So yeah, you just have to have that unique thing that separates you from the rest of people that will copy you.
Yeah, exactly. And like, you guys have this Highly Okay podcast. Yeah. Highly Great starts in 2 months, but they're never going to be as good as you guys because you guys already have your following and maybe you provide great customer service to people like me, right? Yeah. Like I would much rather come on Highly Okay rather than Highly Great because you guys drove me all the way out here. You gave me water. You
gave her water.
We chatted ahead of time. You have this office. Like, see, these are all things that no one else can steal.
You're absolutely right in the sense that, having that first mover's advantage is important. And, at the end of the day, being the first person and, going back to what San says, when you do well, more people are going to want to do what you're doing because it's doing so well, right? But what I'd also say, if Highly Great did start, they'd bring more podcast listeners. Like, the thing is, we encourage people to start a podcast, because podcasts aren't a thing here.
No, they should be.
They should be
getting big all over the world, right?
Like, Akam, the person we were telling you about who came on before, he's a Kurdish gamer. You know, he's come to your 5-1 Labs as well.
He's awesome.
He's awesome. And he said, he broke it down the best way. He said podcasts, what you do when you're doing, what you listen to when you're doing something else. Like, you know, when you're driving, when you're washing the dishes, when you're
working out.
When you're working out. Yeah. Like, sometimes the same song can get boring. Listen to different songs, sure. But still, point is, podcasts aren't a thing here. If another podcast came here, we'd, you know, have them on the podcast. Definitely, come here. Yeah. Let's do it, you know? But yeah, for sure. And you're saying people here are worried about that. They're worried, and I don't blame them. And at the same time, you think about, you know, I'm sure you know this, but the big problem here is that, you know, a large percentage of the workforce here work for the government. It's I was about to say reliable money, but it's not even that. But like, even so, you know, they think it's stable, and they don't want to change. And if they do change, they need investors. And if they go to an investor and the investor thinks it's a good idea, then the good idea will be taken. And, you know, private property really isn't held up as well as you think here. Well, not as you think, but, you know, like, yeah, I don't blame them for having that sort of problem. But what was your advice that you'd give to them?
So a couple of times people would apply to our programs, and one of the parts of the application is you have to describe your idea, and they would say, I don't want to tell you my idea, but it's very good. Wow. And we it's happening less now, but it probably happens like 3 to 5 times every application cycle. And we would basically just write back to them and say, hey, like, we totally get it. You are definitely not getting into our program unless you are willing to share your idea. Yeah. Like, that's a huge part of the program, is having a supportive community, having a mentor. If you aren't willing to be open to that, then you're just not right for this program. And sometimes people would never write us back. And sometimes they would say, okay, I understand, and I like want to tell you my idea. And then, you know, sometimes they would get into our programs. And then in our program itself, I think it's just part of the culture. It's like, if you want to do this, then you have to be confident in yourself. You have to be confident in your idea and the fact that you are bringing something that's different from others.
Absolutely.
And so I think that's just something that all of our entrepreneurs just gain over the course of the program, is like, yeah, I'm awesome. And even if highly great starts, like, these are the 5 ways that I am going to be different and better. I'm going to be highly more awesome.
Okay.
Yeah, more okay. The most okay. Yeah. So.
Yeah. So I want you to, I don't want you to repeat yourself, but I want you to go back to a bit more about what 5-1 Labs do, because we did have a problem with the sound that we just fixed again. So tell us a bit more about 5-1 Labs, what they do, what the program is, just briefly, so we can like, let the people know, because it's so important.
Cool. So 5-1 Labs is a startup incubator. What that means is that we help people who have a business idea go from idea to launch. And so we do that in a number of ways. We provide them with training on business and management and innovation and creativity. We provide them with mentors who come from all over the world, companies like Facebook and Google and startups. We provide them with free office space in our co-working space. And for a number of the startups at the end of the program, they compete for seed funding of up to $15,000. And that's kind of what is included in our flagship program. But then we also have, you know, weekend boot camps where it's just like a fun competition. We have evening courses. We have courses specifically for female founders who are actually at the stage of growing their business. So our goal is to help anyone who wants to launch or grow a business to be successful at doing that.
Yeah, so you told me when I came to visit you that you had investors coming in quite often. So it's not just the seed funding at the end of the program where they have a chance to find investors and an investment. You have people come in with money that can help them as well. Like, you try and create these events for networking, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, so kind of like you guys were just talking about with wanting other podcasts to exist, we are the exact same way when it comes to entrepreneurship. The entrepreneurial ecosystem here in Iraq is pretty weak. I'm sure you guys would say the same thing. Yeah, exactly. You know, in Soleimani, it's kind of AUIS and 51 Labs are the main ones doing entrepreneurship stuff. You know, there's the station in Baghdad, there's Mosul, Mosul Space in Mosul. So there are organizations starting to do this, but it's still a small number. And so,
oh wow!
We'll keep going.
Really?
Go ahead. Kurdish problems. Amazing.
Hashtag Kurdish.
Yeah.
So one of the things we try to do is really strengthen the entrepreneurial ecosystem, and that means that we constantly host events where we invite in local investors. Once a year, we bring international investors here, investors from the U.S., UK, and Dubai, and we fly entrepreneurs all into the same place. We fly entrepreneurs up from Baghdad. We bring people from all across Kurdistan to pitch in front of these investors. We just kind of want to create as many opportunities as possible for our entrepreneurs to potentially get funding. So if it's not from us, it's either from another NGO or from an investor or whatever it might be.
So, sorry.
Go ahead. No.
Speaking to investors, what's the sort of feel that they have right now in the current climate? Are they willing to start investing? Are they waiting for the right sort of... Obviously, they're waiting for the right idea and the right sort of implementation. But considering the economy being on the rise again, I guess, are investors out there really looking? Because I know a friend of mine is looking at making an app where investors can look at ideas through an app and a software. They think that there's an idea there. You know, I'm sure that there's a lot of money out there. It's just a matter of whether they're looking to invest it. What do you think? What's your take on that?
First of all, tell your friend to come talk to us because they sound awesome. So
I think they already do. I'm not sure.
Oh, really? Okay, sure. Come talk to us.
Labs.
The second thing I would say is, what was the question? I just got distracted.
So yeah, when
what are investors?
What do investors feel like right now in the current climate?
I think I'm an optimist. You probably can tell this. I think now is a really cool time to be doing this in Iraq.
Really?
Yeah, it's just, you know, we talk to people all the time. Like, people are reaching out to us from all over the world. And everybody is interested in Iraq right now. And that doesn't mean they're all serious.
What do you mean everyone?
I mean, we just have a lot of investors reaching out to us to say, I am starting a MENA-focused investment fund, and we want to include Iraq. Can you give us more information? Or big international organizations say, we're interested in focusing more on investment in Iraq. Can you help us think through this? You know, probably 90% of those things will never happen just because, you know, they're from the outside. They don't necessarily know how to operate here, but there are already things happening in Iraq. There's Iraq Tech Ventures, which is a fund that's launching in Baghdad. They've already made some investments. There are individual international investors that have already come here and made some investments. Stuff is happening. It's happening slowly. And I think, you know, we have to see, especially with some recent things happening around the world in this region.
That's the only thing. We were making some progress.
I know.
Oh, God.
It's really upsetting. But I think before that happened, at least, the general trend was towards people being
So you're telling
really
me
excited.
most of the investors aren't actually from here?
No. I think there are local investors doing stuff as well. But I'm just saying, even internationally, like there's more interest in Iraq. I think Iraq is a big market that's fairly untapped when it comes to this sort of thing.
Is that the same reason you wanted to start off here? Because I saw an interview of yours. You said you just graduated and like moved here to start your project here. Is that so?
Yeah, so I first moved here in 2012, and so I think one of the reasons we wanted to start here is because we already had a network here. We had already kind of known the young people here, and we had already seen some of the talent, and I think that helped us be like, okay, Kurdistan, like this is a great place to start. My co-founder also kind of worked focusing on Iraq. So yeah, I guess that was basically what happened.
So it's a good place to start, because especially after like the war and everything, like it's, you know, it's quote unquote over right now. So I assume it's a good place to start off again, because a lot of opportunities, and I think even the government's trying to like make things more digital and like add more technology into it.
Yeah, exactly. I think there are a lot of challenges here. But that also means that there are a lot of opportunities, right? So like for every challenge, it means that there's a gap in the market that can be filled by a new business. And so, you know, we're working with a green roofing business that is, you know, one of the first in the whole country. You know, there are just these huge opportunities for business. And so that's, yeah, it's really cool. I think it's a place where over the next 5 years, things could just change drastically in a lot of ways.
Take off like Qatar or UAE.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, there are some major challenges here. There's the fact that e-payment is really, really challenging. And so it's all cash on delivery, and that really increases risk. I think we need more coding talent. So you need to become a freelancer and help out startups.
Yeah, I tried to do my part as well, definitely, yeah.
Exactly. And so I think there's like more talent coming into the market. There are definitely a lot of challenges, but if those challenges can be addressed, yeah, I mean, I think there's so much opportunity here in Iraq right now.
Do you have more people approaching you from like private university, like students from private universities, or is it like all over the place?
It is all over the place. Our entrepreneurs, you know, in our last cohort, we had entrepreneurs from Kirkuk and Mosul and Erbil and Baghdad, and you know, it's just everywhere. We have entrepreneurs from Syria as well as Iraq, and we kind of aim to make sure that every one of our cohorts is super diverse, because diversity also breeds innovation and creativity.
I agree, definitely.
Yeah.
What's the next like big project that you're working on?
In the fall, we are launching our first ever tech incubator. So before, like I said, we focused on kind of scalable, innovative businesses, but that includes things like a green roofing business or I can't think of any of our other more traditional ones, but it's not only tech. And so for the next basically 6 months, here in Soleimani, we're focusing 100% on tech startups.
That's awesome.
It's really cool.
And it's more scalable as well.
100%.
Tech businesses,
100%.
you know, it's much easier to grow and like.
Exactly. And we also just launched a partnership with IOM, where they are going to be funding a lot of tech businesses across the country as well. They're working with us in AsiaCell.
Oh, wow.
And so there's just, I think right now, there's a lot of interest in tech innovations here in Iraq. And so it'll be really cool to see kind of what happens this year.
What's your goal with 5-1 Labs? I mean, obviously the goal is for it to produce as many good businesses and entrepreneurs to be as successful as possible. But what do you see, what would make you most proud if 5-1 Labs was to be able to, you know, become global in the sense that it's helped, you know, as a startup incubator, or if it was to produce, to help one entrepreneur have $1 billion net worth, you know, make Kurdish, I mean, you know, not Kurdish to say, but like say a Soleimani from 5-1 Labs done the program and starts employing, say, 100,000 people from the KRG. Is that something that you dream about, or what keeps you up at work at the office late hours?
I think for me, I think it's two things. I think we do eventually want to scale internationally, but right now being here in Iraq is so much fun. There's just like always so much going on that I think that will be kind of far in the future. I think what you said about kind of having these, you know, having some of our entrepreneurs just be super successful and, you know, employ all these people and kind of change the face of Iraq's economy, that's awesome. And the other thing is, one thing that I think would be just an amazing kind of success for us and for kind of everyone working here is if, you know, there's a conversation happening in Turkey or Dubai or somewhere in Europe where someone's like, you know, blah, 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 Iraq. And someone's like, oh yeah, Iraq. Like, that's a really innovative place. Like, there's some really cool stuff happening there.
If
Like
we were
that,
known for that.
exactly. Instead of being like, oh yeah, Iraq, there were like wars, or oh yeah, I
Oil.
hear, or oil. Exactly. Like it would. That's, in my mind, that would just be the coolest thing. If
That
people
would
were
be
like,
cool.
oh yeah, I hear that there's like some really badass stuff happening in Iraq.
That's a
would-
very interesting way to look at it. I like that kind of optimism. I can get behind that one.
Nice.
For sure. So tell me, with 51 Labs, have you had someone who's, you don't need to say the name, but like who's made you sort of proud so far, that's you know, went out there after the program, and then like you're just scrolling through your social media and you see, oh, they're doing pretty well.
Oh. Yeah. Oh my gosh. All of them. They're
Really?
like
Okay.
total rock stars.
Nice.
But okay, so a couple of like cool things that have happened recently. I asked this entrepreneur if I could use her name, so I'm going to shout out Leilon, who was an AUIS graduate.
Okay.
Launched Dada Babysitting, which is an app that connects young parents to babysitters. So she won our demo day, so she like won our incubator competition. But then in addition to that, she recently applied to a startup competition in Baghdad called Startup Battle, I think. And she got third place in this Iraq-wide competition against businesses that have been running for like 5 years. And now she's on her way to Beirut to compete against businesses from across the Middle East. And
with that one idea.
with her idea.
Definitely, it's a great idea. I've heard about it before.
Yeah.
Yeah, so she's like, this is, I think, the first time that Iraq has ever been included in these regional competitions. And so she gets to go there and represent Iraq and pitch for $20,000, and for like, she would get a trip to the Silicon Valley and all of these cool things. So that's awesome. We had a couple of our startups recently went to Germany as part of this program to like learn more about the German startup ecosystem. Another one of our entrepreneurs just got funding from Response Innovation Lab, which is an awesome NGO based in Erbil, to launch his business in Mosul. So every day we're kind of seeing this new amazing news of our entrepreneurs like really doing cool things.
It's like you know, watching your son or your daughter do well.
It's
after,
true.
It's a great
After 3
I'm
months
such a
of
mom.
seeing them every day, and now they're grown up.
Yeah.
They're getting their own funding. That must be fun. I mean, because that's the reason I asked that question. Sorry if you're going to speak. But like, it's non-profit at the end of the day. 51 Labs. I mean, obviously the people that are there, they get paid, but that's why I ask, because at the end of the day, you know, you're giving investment, you're helping people with no overhead for them, and it's brilliant. I mean, so where do you see 51 Labs in 5 years? Do you are you more looking at its how do you say, its value and its importance in the KRG entrepreneurial scene, or are you looking at it scaling from becoming it being so valuable that people are willing to pay for the programs and, you know, take it on without having to, you know, without having you needed to give it for free for you know, virtually zero overhead? Would you see it going to? Do you see it going from a non-profit to a valuable, profitable company, or do you see it becoming? Do you want it to become just an important powerhouse in the entrepreneurial scene in KRG?
I think the second or first, I actually can't remember when you said this
second's
first, but
entrepreneur-
the powerhouse.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
choose powerhouse. No, I think we want to keep working with early stage entrepreneurs, you know, the entrepreneurs who have the ideas but don't necessarily know what to do to start a business. That is not profitable. If we wanted to make profit,
True,
we would be
yeah.
working with entrepreneurs that, you know, have been around for 3 to 5 years, that are like sure bets. And we're working with entrepreneurs who, like, who knows, right? Tomorrow they might be like, entrepreneurship sucks, I quit. And that's okay. Like, that's the purpose of the program, is to give them a safe space to figure out whether this is for them or not. So I think we're definitely going to stay a nonprofit. But one thing, I mean, going back to like the kind of ecosystem side of things, success for us is that in 5 years, Iraq has a really strong entrepreneurial ecosystem, and that we're a really valuable member of that ecosystem. Like we want there to be more investors, local and international. We want more people working on entrepreneurship. Like you guys said, we want other podcasts. We want other entrepreneur initiatives. You know, we want it so that, thinking from the entrepreneur's perspective, if I am an entrepreneur here in Kurdistan or in Iraq, like my goal as 5-1 Labs is that that entrepreneur has opportunities. Like they can see a path forward. It's no longer like, if I'm an entrepreneur, I'm unemployed. It's no, like I'm an entrepreneur. I can go through this program and I know I'll get this support. Then I know that there's this investment fund so that if I survive this long, I can get funding from here or from the banks or from whatever it is. Like right now, there's not much of a path. It's like you're an entrepreneur, you join 5-1 Labs, you hopefully get seed funding, and then what? Like there's kind of a gap there. And so I think we really want to make sure that like that whole journey is taken care of and that like there are next steps. For us, so like the next 5 years is figuring out whether we do that or whether there are other partners we can bring on board. You know, how can investment fit into all of this? How can we kind of expand our network and our entrepreneurs' network so that they can like really, you know, expand regionally or expand globally? Like how cool would it be to have a brand that's started here that's popular around the world?
Obviously, and being one of the very few ones that does this here in this region, you're obviously going to make a lot of mistakes and learn from them along the way as well. What are some of the mistakes that you guys have made that you think you've learned from, and you're
so
not going to
many.
repeat again?
One thing we actually learned recently, and this is kind of a weird small thing, but or it's not that small. Yeah. Our incubator was 3 months long, and it was like, okay, you have a business idea, you have to commit to work full time on your business for at least 3 months. Just like go, and in that 3 months, you kind of learned more about your customers and your market. That's like, that kind of all happens during the first month of the program. You learn, is there a market for my product? So sometimes people learn that there isn't a market for their product and they still have 2 months of this full-time program to go. And so we actually saw that there was a dropout point at the end of the first month where people were just like, this isn't going to work and I don't really want to change, you know? And so we actually changed our model after our last incubator cohort. So now we're running these month-long Ignite programs where we basically broke off the first month of our incubator. And so everything focusing on like customers and market happens in this 1 month standalone program. So basically you can say, okay, I think I have a great idea. I don't know if customers actually want it. I'm going to spend the next month figuring that out. And then at the end of the month, there will be like a go, no go decision. Like, is this going to work or do I think that this isn't going to work?
So first thing is market research for you guys. You want to see if it will sell in the first place.
Exactly. Is this a feasible idea? Okay. And so that is now a standalone program. So it's like, you have to go through this. You have to convince us it's a feasible idea. Only once you go through this can you apply for our incubator. And then the incubator is now completely focused on actually like building the product. It's like, you know, your customers are there. Let's get to work, like actually creating it. So that was a big one.
Yeah, no, for sure. You know, and they'll learn as they go along. They'll realize, whoa, it wasn't the greatest idea in the world, you know, and then it's priceless in itself, and it's funny that it actually doesn't have a price on it. It's almost too good to be true. But so tell me, like before we started recording on the mics because of our technical issue, I asked you a question of when you are narrowing down the companies that the entrepreneurs or the companies that are going to take part in your program. I asked you a question that you thought you said you liked. That I asked you, what was more important for you, the entrepreneur or the idea itself?
So what I said before, I think, I would say it's about 50-50. So, you know, you have to be able to prove to us that there is a great idea and that there's this market, but it takes a really serious entrepreneur to be able to kind of take the steps to think through those things and to really do what is necessary and kind of have the drive necessary to launch a business. And so the individual definitely is the most important part, but a lot of that comes out through the idea. So if you're pitching an idea to me and I see that you've done the background research, that you have data, that you have talked to customers, then I can tell that you're serious about it, you're like thinking about it in an analytical way, and that makes me more confident. So it's definitely the individual, but like the idea is part of the individual. It's all kind of part and parcel.
Of course. So tell me, like, where do you want this to go for 5-1 Labs from? Like, as the economy is growing, do you see more investment being open? Like, because do you see more investment coming in from the investors right now because of the economy growing? Do you see the economy growing?
Yes. Okay, to answer your question, where do we see this going? For 5-1 Labs, where we see it going is that we're just now opening an office in Erbil. We're expanding across Kurdistan.
You were in Erbil, before that as well, right?
Yeah.
And then you came back to Slimani. Tell me the thinking behind that.
So we were in Erbil for our first cohort, which was awesome. And then we expanded to Slimani to open this giant co-working space that we have here. The co-working space ended up taking so much time and energy to actually like create this massive space that we ended up kind of moving everything here to Suli just to focus on opening the space. So that's why we left Erbil for a while and we were just focused on opening the space in Suli. So the lab Suli is open now. It's 850 meters squared. It's this giant, like really fun space. You've been there.
It's really nice.
And so now we're lucky enough to be able to expand back to Erbil. We're opening a smaller space there, but we're running the same programs and working with the community there. So that's going to be really exciting. We're expanding across Kurdistan and we're thinking of expanding across the country as well. But then also, if things go well, investment will increase. I think we definitely have the buy-in of entrepreneurs. Like I said, our applications are growing. I think more and more young people are interested in this path, but we need to convince investors and financiers that this is legitimate and that there are great business ideas and that they can kind of make the investors make money as well, because that's an important part. And so we'll see. Hopefully over the next year or two, this will increase.
Did you start a lot of companies or even like foreigners, when they start their business, they usually think of working in Erbil because it's the capital, and I don't know, that's where most international companies go. Why did you start in Slimani? Why did you choose here?
So when we first started working, we were actually in Erbil for a little while. The reason why we wanted to expand to Suli is I am slightly biased. I first moved to Slimani in 2012. I was working with the American University here. Yeah. I think Slimani has just an amazing, innovative community. Like, people are progressive. They're super creative. There are just so many awesome ideas. In our Erbil cohort, we actually had a number of entrepreneurs from Slimani. In our Slimani cohort, we had some entrepreneurs from Erbil as well. So it's kind of, everybody can travel back and forth. But I think we always knew that we wanted a place in Erbil and a place in Slimani.
Right. So both are going to stay.
Yeah, right,
for
sure.
Good. And you're going to stay most of the time in Erbil?
I live here in Slimani, but but I will definitely be traveling. We have an amazing team in Erbil now, and I think there's going to be a lot of cool stuff happening there.
I'm glad that you're expanding. If you expand, then entrepreneurs will be able to expand, and I'm glad that you came on to do this as well. But before we let you go, or before we end anything, I want to ask you an important question. We spoke about entrepreneurs having obstacles, and 5-1 Labs gives connections, and past experiences with different entrepreneurs will help 5-1, the people who participate in the 5-1 Labs program, succeed through the experiences they've had, through the connections that they've made, the connections you've made. You put them in touch with people, which is brilliant, which is one of the biggest problems that entrepreneurs face anyway. But a problem that you'll face as an entrepreneur, that perhaps you may not be able to help too much with because no one can do anything about it apart from the government, is the government regulations and just government itself. Tell me, what can the government do to incentivize growth in businesses and entrepreneurs? We spoke about private property and how a lot of the entrepreneurs are reluctant to share their ideas to investors because of the lack of copyright, the lack of patent laws. Tell me, like, apart from technological advances in, say, direct debits and financial, because that's a big problem, isn't it? Right?
Yeah.
Like,
that's huge.
That's huge. And I'm glad that I get to speak to you about this because it's something that I've seen a lot. Growing up in London, working in London for the past 2 years, I realized that a lot of my money as a consumer would leave through premiums, through monthly payments, through me being able to, say, pay for something monthly, right? We have none of that here. Maybe if we had a system whereby the banking system was able to charge you through a debit card and wherever, something that was more feasible through a monthly basis. That's an example. Tell me what you've seen that the government can help us with. Hopefully people in power are watching. Doubt it, but
Oh my gosh, there's so many things. But I think if I had to say the 3 biggest things, I would say business registration. That's the first thing. So I'll list the 3 things so I don't forget them because I'm going to forget them. I already did. So first is business registration. Second is e-payments. Third is, there was something else. I'll think of it.
Hopefully by the time you explain the first 2.
By the time I explain them, yeah. So for business registration, it is just so complicated.
Is it true it costs like $3,000?
It depends what type of business you're registering. Okay, so in the United States, I'm just going to give you an example. If you want to start a business, you go onto a website, you say, this is the business name I want. They tell you, is that name taken or not? And you say, okay, it's not taken. And then you pay $50, $150, it depends where you register. And ta-da, you get your paperwork in the mail and you're done. You're a registered business. You have to provide some information, but here there are so many steps. It takes so long and it's so confusing and it's very expensive. So I think the cheapest, and it also changes for each person kind of based on whether you have connections or not. But it's generally between $2,500 to $8,000 if you're doing anything with children, food, import, export, that's more expensive. There is no real law regulating online businesses right now. And so it's really challenging to register a business online. It's really challenging to register an online business. So if you're running an e-commerce website or an app where everything you do is online.
Like Bersima, for example?
Like Bersima. It's really challenging to actually register that business, which means it's really challenging to be protected by the law when it comes to copyright, et cetera. There are IP laws here. They're just not well enforced. But they're still there, and so some people still want the protection. If you are an innovative business idea, it's also really challenging to register your company because the ministries don't know what ministry you belong under. So you go to the Chamber of Commerce, you say, this is my name. They say, okay, you have to go to, let's use the example of green roofing because this is happening right now to our entrepreneur. Do you know what green roofing is?
Yeah.
So green roofing is you put soil and... You put soil and grass on the roof of a building. Yeah. It helps insulate it. It's great in a lot of ways. So the Chamber of Commerce says you have to go to the Ministry of Construction because this is a construction business. And she goes to the Ministry of Construction and they say, green roofing. Like this is plants. This isn't construction. What are you talking about? You have to go to the Ministry of Agriculture. And so she goes to the Ministry of Agriculture to get this document, and they say, you are clearly not agriculture. Roofing is in your name. You are construction. And this happens all the time, where if it's a new type of business, a consulting company, is that higher education? Is that, what does that fall under, for example? And so I think kind of going through that process can take so many months. It's always unclear whether your business will actually get registered, because no one knows what your business is. And, there is part of it that you can do online now through the Chamber of Commerce website.
That's good.
Yeah, it doesn't work very well. So you can supposedly check whether a name is taken or not. Okay. I have tested it out, and it has not worked for me any of the times I've tested it. Maybe it works for some things, and I just haven't. Yeah. But anyway, so registration.
E-payment.
Yeah, registration is terrible. E-payment is not possible, really. PayPal is illegal here. Crowdfunding is illegal here. There are mobile payment platforms like Asia Hawala or Zain Cash. FastPay, but most people don't use those. And so if the majority of your customers are not using it, then there's no incentive for you as a business to put these onto your platform. And so it means that most things happen in cash, which is really dangerous for the entrepreneur, because who knows whether people will pay or not. And it just adds so much more risk. Like, being an entrepreneur is hard enough, but not knowing whether you're going to get paid is just awful. And so the government, there's so much that can be done to connect the banking system to online payments so that can start happening. And that has to happen at the government level. And then I can't remember the third thing, but there's definitely a third thing.
I'm sure there is. I'm sure there's more than 3.
Yeah.
But yeah, at the end of the day, those things matter so much, and how that's gonna, work out, it's crazy. It's so like the GDP points that can go up through those little things. They're not even little. They are pretty hard to implement at the end of the day. We're just sitting here, in a podcast saying that we should do this and that, but it is hard, but it's way worth it. Like, the amount of money that can go around the economy if, people are able to, entrepreneurs are able to receive payments, able to give payments easier. It just makes things way more efficient, and we're just so behind on that. So how much can the private sector do to help that? Do you think 51 Labs Tech, what did you call it?
The Tech Incubator?
The Tech Incubator.
Yeah.
Do you think that could help?
There are tons of solutions that can come through the private sector. Asia Hawala, Zain Cash, that's all like private sector mobile money. It was done in partnership with the government for sure, but these are all kind of private solutions to something that's kind of a public sector problem to a certain degree. So there are definitely things that can happen. Someone could create a website to make it easier to register your business. Like, maybe they help you figure out which ministry to go to. The problem is that so much of it is literally based on a case-by-case basis that it's hard to do much. I used to think that almost every problem could have a private sector solution. I still believe that in a lot of ways, or else I wouldn't be doing entrepreneurship. But there are definitely some challenges here in Iraq that just really need government solutions. And registration is one of them, and e-payments is the other. Like, those two massive problems, you just can't fix them without government help. So
I think the fact that we don't have e-payment is it cripples a lot of businesses and business owners from growing to the next level, and that's why we struggle so hard to reach the rest of the world, basically. And do you think that's going to happen anytime soon? Because I think I've seen people like Qubat talk about this, like the Prime Minister and Deputy Prime Minister. Sorry, yeah, they're trying to bring tech into the government, but how realistic is that so far? Because I'm a believer, personally, but am I just being naive, or is that a real thing happening?
what kind of believer are you? Like a believer in God? He's an optimist. Oh yeah, sorry. We've had so many technical issues this time. It's been so terrible. But like we're sharing a mic now.
It's cute. It's cute. Sharing is caring.
At least we can't talk over each other.
No, I'm saying I'm a believer in the fact that we can get better. Like if there was a time for us to grow and get better as a country and as a nation and even as a government, it would be now. But you're the one that's really in the game and in the business, so you know more than I do.
I think some of the stuff they're doing, putting services online, is awesome. I mean, it really is like changing the way that people here relate to the government, and I think it's a really, really cool initiative, and I think it will have a big change if it's successful. The e-payment stuff is challenging because it's actually not just Iraq. It's not like, Iraq government, like, why don't you fix this? It's also about international financial transactions and some of the results of like international regulations when it comes to transfers to Iraq. And so there are some challenges when it comes to like OFAC regulations. It's whether it's legal to transfer money to certain organizations or people in Iraq. And that's just a pain in the ass. I mean, to be really honest, like there's just like some stuff. So it's not just in Iraq. It's just like this big tangle of stuff happening around the world. I think it can change. Like, I don't know this 100% for sure, but I'm pretty sure that the reason PayPal is not in Iraq, for example, that's not Iraq. That's PayPal, actually. Like PayPal deciding that they, for like different kind of risk, money transfer risk reasons, they're not operating here. And so, you know, if PayPal is listening to this podcast, please help us.
Definitely. Elon Musk's listening.
Yeah. Like, come here, we're great. No, but I think some of it has to do with, you know, can some of these like international businesses change their regulations? And if they could, then that would have just like a huge effect on what happens here. So
yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, if any of this does happen, it will be up to the government, and with the help of private sector, these things can become possible. And the private sector will grow because of, you know, companies like 501 Labs. And, you know, we've gone past the hour mark, and I've learned so much having you on here. We really, really hope everyone else did. Despite the technical difficulties, we're so embarrassed that this happened in front of Alice.
It is pretty embarrassing.
Yeah, but we'll live and learn. You know, just like the entrepreneurs that you have on that pivot. I don't know what we're going to pivot into. what kind of pivot that is. But thanks again for watching. Thank you for coming.
Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, it's been brilliant. And, you know, tune in, stay tuned, and, you know, keep liking, keep subscribing, keep sharing. If you keep doing it, we might make less technical difficulties. But yeah, thanks again for coming on. Highly OK Podcast. Have a good day.